Well, I'm going to interrupt all the quietness. Good morning, everyone. Call the meeting to order. We have a number of guests here today, so I think some introductions are in order. And Lane, I think I'll start with you today.
Good morning. I'm Lane Johnson, the Director of Corporate Services.
I'm Pam Elliott, Administrative Assistant Planning and Development.
Hi, Wayne Hammergan, County Division 4, Scandia, Rainier, and Bow City.
Good morning, Tracy Fife, Division 5, Lake Mill Resort, Castles, Antelope Creek area.
Good morning, Kevin Stevenson, County Administrator.
Good morning, I'm Molly Douglas from the GEM area of the county.
Good morning, I'm Clarence Samuel. I live in Rolling Hills, and I'm challenged by this group to chair the MPC. So welcome.
Good morning, I'm Kelly Chrisman. I'm from the west side of the county, around Bassano.
Good morning, Brian DeJong, Div 8, which is around the village of Dutchess.
Good morning, Hebe Kellen, Division 2, Tilly area.
Good morning, Anne-Marie Phillipson, Division 3, Patricia area.
Good morning, Lionel Juss, Division 10, which is north and east of Brooks.
If we could start with our guests, Mark. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for attending. We have one person to be excused. Ellen couldn't make it today. If we could have her excused. Anne-Marie, all in favor? Our minutes from August the 8th have been circulated. Are there any errors or omissions? Can we accept them as circulated? Tracy? Tracy moves. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Are there any post-agenda items for MPC? Seeing none, can we have an adoption of the agenda? Lionel moves. All in favor? That is passed. Then we'll go to the development report. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we will accept it as information and we'll move on to subdivisions.
Unfortunately, Diane couldn't be here today, so I'm going to do the subdivision application on her behalf. The purpose of this subdivision is to create one new parcel on a previously unsubdivided quarter. The subdivision is approximately 29.24 acres, and it contains an existing residence. It is in the southwest of 2017. So in the Bassano area. The proposed parcel was recently rezoned from agriculture to the small holdings district. Services to the parcel are from a septic tank and field, and it also is serviced by county rural water. There was discussion at the rezoning about the size of the parcel, and that's to accommodate a horse pasture.
Questions? Kelly?
Maria, can you just tell me what the purpose or ideal acreage size is, small holdings? Typically, or maybe Anne-Marie, this is up your lane. I have no problem with it. It's out in the middle of Latham, a good 15 kilometers from the town site. I would think that it would be awesome to have pasture land that far out. I just wanted to hear what's in the land use bylaw.
Okay, well, the land use bylaw says that the minimum parcel size is 3 acres and the maximum is 40 acres for this. So I guess that's why it was rezoned, so it could accommodate a larger parcel size. And I did check the EID water rights this morning, and there is a pivot that goes on the east side of that, but where the parcel is, there's no water rights at all on that, in that whole area past where the subdivision is as well. So it's not being irrigated at the moment or used currently for irrigation farmland.
Anne-Marie?
Well, I mentioned to Kelly this morning that I sometimes have trouble with those big parcels if it's an irrigated quarter. You want to keep the parcel that you take out of an irrigated quarter as small as possible. In this case, it's not irrigated, so I guess we changed it to small holdings, kind of approved it that way, so it's okay.
So further to that, I would like to make a motion to approve.
Wayne?
Just one other concern. I noticed that this makes the other remainder of that parcel is an oddly shaped piece of land now, and I think in the future maybe that's something we should also look at, because it's got a piece often just jagging off there. If they wanted to do this, make it at least even. Go all the way to the north with the parcel, make it 40 acres or whatever, just to make it square. You see what I mean? So just a concern. So
Trying to interfere in landowners' rights again, are you? No, just kidding. We know how hot a topic that is. Any further discussion? All in favor? That is passed. We'll move on to development permits and on to the first one, which is the waste management storage site. Who's taking this? Channel E.
Development permit 2019021 is for an isolated industrial business, specifically a waste management storage site. The applicant is not requesting any variances to the setback. The applicant has obtained Alberta transportation approval. The business is a soil recycling facility, specifically hydrovac trucks will deliver their clean, uncontaminated soil to the site where it will be put into one of the 5 pits and will be spread by the applicant to let dry for 6 months to a year. The applicant has obtained approval from Alberta Environment to store, dry, and dispose of slurry, which must be disposed at a landfill facility. The applicant is in the process of obtaining approval from Alberta Environment to sell and reuse the soil. However, this approval has not been obtained yet. The applicant purchased calcium for 100 feet on the west side of his parcel. The business will operate with 1 employee. There was no issues or concerns from staff or ORSC. There is an adjacent response which is included in your package. We are recommending approval with conditions. One of the conditions specifically is D, which states that the soil cannot be sold until Alberta Environment approval has been submitted to the county. And condition C is that Alberta Environment approval is obtained for the storage, and we have received that approval. Mr. Grossfield is here to answer questions.
Yes, I think we have two folks here on this particular one for sure. So are there anything that either of you would like to add? And three of us, yeah. I guess there's 3 actually that's involved in this particular one. Go ahead, Rains.
Yes, we sent in a letter, and I hope you received it and you read it. I think we are specifically my daughter and my son-in-law want to farm in the future. That's why we moved down here. Are we pertinent, specific against this development? Not so, however, we have a lot of questions. And let me explain one of the things. If I talk, when we got a notification, it says soil reclamation. If I go back in history, soil reclamation is, for instance, when you put a dike around a piece of water, pump the water out, you make a polder, you have the best soil there is. That's one soil reclamation. The other soil reclamation that I vividly remember is when they dredge out canals and rivers and the dirt that comes out there. Finally, people found out that actually it's not always as clean as possible, so there was a lot of heavy metals in some cases, specifically when you dredge out harbors and so on. It's also called soil reclamation. The other one is dust. For instance, I remember Del Salle is a harbor town, and what he found out after a few years that a lot of sheep that were in the area, in the industrial area, they died. And when they did research, they found out actually in the dust that came from the plants, there was a lot of copper. And sheep cannot stand to copper, so they died. So our main concern is in this case, soil reclamation is, the letter what we got, is not clearly defined what kind of soil it is, what's in the soil, where does it come from. I remember when I was busy as chairman for the Alberta Livestock, and we were busy with the clarification of AOPA, Alberta Agricultural Practices Act, we found out that if there's heavy contamination on a lease, even with benzene, theoretically it's not an issue as long as it doesn't leave the lease. So, however, in our case, when we have dairy, and currently our products are being tested on the parts per billion and all kind of issues. So we don't know what's in this soil. It didn't clearly state what soil, where it came from. Is there a guarantee that there's no dust with contaminants that can come into our field? If that happens, we could lose our whole livelihood because of small particles that's in the air. So I don't know what kind of soil it is. We don't know where it comes from. We don't know what the contaminants is. And clearly, the way it was worded, it can also mean in the future that there could be, let's say, a big plant where they burn all the stuff and everything goes in the air. I don't know. It doesn't clearly state. I did talk to Roy, and he said, I can see what's going on, and I don't have to go there. I know what's going on currently. But what currently is going on is that being protected for the future. What can happen? Are we protected against these contaminants by air or by soil that can come onto our farm? Or is there clearly in the Alberta environment permit, does it clearly state that what the definition is of the soil? Because clearly, in my opinion, it's in the definition, what is soil, what kind of soil are we talking about, and what kind of contaminants are we talking about, and what kind of reclamation are we talking about. Because if it's just by aeration, what's currently going on is something different that might be going on in the future. So we have a lot of questions, and based on the question, we have a hard time to stand behind it at this moment.
Reens, could you, one thing that I'm not, you said it was also in your area of your intensive livestock operation. I can't remember the exact wording as it was here.
The setbacks.
Yeah, the setbacks. So can you explain what your concern is there a little bit? Like, what are the setbacks?
The setbacks are if you have a certain amount of animals and intensive livestock, then according to the clarification from June 2004 from AOPA, it states that you can have as many animals on your property as the facility what is currently in place. So based on that, they determine the setbacks. So let's say we have around 170, 180 dairy cows. Then based on that, under AOPA, they determine a setback. that setback can be adjusted. I have to look into it, but I think every 3 years there's a certain percentage that you can actually reduce the setback, so there can be a small expansion on every farm as well. So these setbacks are actually meant to be, so there's less effect on the neighbors for their well-being or perceived well-being, as well as according to noise level, smell, etc. And these setbacks are determined by in the NRCB, under NRCB rules.
But as it is today, there's no problem.
Currently, at today, there's no problem whatsoever. It only comes into effect when we have to talk about it if we want to expand. Then it comes into being, and then everybody that is in that circle from the setbacks will get notified and has a say in that. So in this case, is it Badger that will have then also an extra say in it, or is it just the neighbor that has a say in that? That's another question that we have as well.
Okay, fine, I understand. Are there any other comments from either Ray or Badger or want to be made?
So in the past, hydrovac slurry coming from irrigation sites, farmland, residential stuff, it was just dumped anywhere, corners of the fields, wherever. So the AEP, the Alberta Parks Environment, has set it up so everything has to be taken to an approved site. And as of right now, the only approved site is Tervita, a Class 2 facility, where we're taking this clean fill and we're contaminating it now with whatever waste is in the pits, right? So the stuff that's going to be hauled to Roy's location is stuff where the soil we're taking out from fields, residential areas, and if there's any signs of contamination, it will not be dumped there. It will be taken to a Class 2 facility like it always has. So for the soil that's being dumped there, there's no dry soils. It's all wet soils. We're taking the water out of the soil, and then from there it's going to get tested and then get hauled away to the landfill once it's tested and approved to be hauled. So there shouldn't be any issues with dust or anything like that.
So can you tell me how you determine once you hydrovac something and then you've got this stuff in your truck? How is it tested before you get to the site? I mean,
well, you can determine by smell, and if you run into contamination, you can usually tell. As soon as you mix water with contamination, you'll see a sheen, right? And as soon as my guys see any of that, then it's reported and it's taken to a Class 2 facility. So every load that is hauled out there is also documented on a bill of lading, and which are also tracked by our company. And if we get audited by the AEP, I have it for them as well.
Sorry, just a few comments. The county has been affected by new regulations and new information received from Alberta Environment and the AEP with regards to hydrovac slurry. Like Albert mentioned, typically in the past, hydrovac slurry has been dumped in numerous locations to fill in dugouts, to bring up low areas, to get rid of it, basically. Alberta Environment and maybe Albert attended the same workshop that I did almost a year ago now in Medicine Hat. they've really started to crack down on the disposal and the management of hydrovac slurry. So what happens now, like Albert mentioned, anybody requesting hydrovac or hydro excavation in the ground is responsible for first performing an assessment and whether they feel that that soil is contaminated and hazardous or uncontaminated. Right away that triggers people, you know, if it is hazardous or if you feel it's hazardous, by smell, by sight, by it being adjacent to a pipeline right of way, near an old fuel station, it's a field level assessment is what somebody's supposed to do. If that turns out that that field level assessment says that this is hazardous material, like Albert mentioned, Class 2 facility, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, and treated as such at Terra Vita. That's where we have been taking all of our hydrovac waste right now because we don't have any of these approved facilities in the county to reclaim the dirt. Basically, the second option is if you feel that that hydrovac slurry is not contaminated, that it's clean fill, well, now you've got another option. Alberta Environment is regulating these sites and approving these sites to transport that material. You take your material there, like they've mentioned, they have pits designed where the material, the water leaches off and the material dries out. You turn it over to dry it out quicker. Currently, that water has to be tested and treated as wastewater through a wastewater treatment facility, and current regulations state that the soil can only be disposed of at the landfill. Currently, the only reuse for that soil is if you were to remove the water on site and put that dirt back in the same hole that you took it out of. As soon as you remove it from site, that dirt has to be dried and end up at the landfill. Alberta Environment is working on changes and some approvals to help, I think, with what Mr. Grossfield's looking at in the resale of the dirt and the reuse of that dirt, which is excellent, rather than hauling it to the landfill and letting it have a home there. If that dirt's clean, we should be able to reuse it. So that's just a little bit of background on where Alberta Environment stands. And, you know, a year ago at this meeting, you know, that these regulations have been in place for some time, but they haven't been enforced. They did let us know that, you know, enforcement is coming. And at that time, they had just handed out a fine to TELUS in the neighborhood of $500,000 for improper disposal of hydrovac slurry. Previous to this, I believe the closest pit was at the landfill in Drumheller. They have a hydrovac slurry reclamation pit. So barring that in this area, hydrovacers and companies and people requesting hydrovac excavation are hauling it to Terra Vita at exorbitant prices to dispose of that. So just a little background on the Alberta Environment side of things and whatnot.
That's good because it's a new area certainly for myself and I think for everybody around the table.
And with, can I?
Yes, go ahead.
And with the pits we designed at Grossfield Farms, we were only required to build a clay liner. So we did, but we went above and beyond and we actually put a 40 mil liner in, just so any of the water, or if there was any traces of contamination, it could be handled and not go into the ground.
Brian?
I have two questions. One's it is off of Reence's question. So if there's a change to the use, that has to come back through a development permit. Am I correct in that, I guess?
Yeah, any intensification or change in use would have to come for a new development permit from the county.
Okay, and the second question is for you, Roy. When we visited yesterday, you gave me a bit of an overview of the history of that area, and our council and myself is always concerned about our agriculture and the perception that land is disappearing from agriculture use, and I think you shared a great history of it, and I'd like you to share that with council too about that actual parcel and perhaps what you've, as the owner of that land, what it's done over the years.
Okay, thanks, Brian and Jeff. Way back when the canals were built, when they didn't have a hill to use, they had to find a dirt source. So what they did on some quarters was they dug a little slough and used that dirt to build the canals, which is right beside our pit. It was approximately 4 to 5 acres and about 6 feet deep, and the canal was unlined and it filled it full of water right away. and cattails and grass grew, and basically there was no way we could farm it. So over the years, the EID lined that canal, and that corner dried up, but it was still a big hole with no topsoil and no way we could irrigate it. So we basically just mowed it to keep the weeds down, and now we're starting to use that for, or hopefully starting to use that for hydrovac slurry. So we're really not taking anything out of production.
You? Other questions? Molly?
So, to Jeff, so then this whole process and this development permit is basically the rules are above us with the provincial government at Alberta Environment and Parks. They're controlling what goes on.
Yes, we're not regulating how or what, or the design of the pad site and whatnot. And to be honest with you, Alberta Environment, this is very fresh to them. They don't have a typical drawing or a typical design of what a pad site should look like either. I don't think they do yet. They've been using some other compost pit drawings that they've had and approving sites based on that. And all the operations of this and the regulations come through them, not through the county.
So this is an improvement, obviously, over what has been going on, possibly with the whole slurry business.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Wayne?
Would this be considered industrial land on a tax base?
Who's going to answer that one? Maria?
No, this is still zoned agriculture, so this will be an isolated industrial use on an agricultural piece. So to speak to your question about
Maria, just grab the mic from me.
So to speak to the question about intensification, anything that changes from what is in this application needs to come back to MPC. And if it becomes an industrial production, then we will have to look at rezoning. And that would require adjacent landowner referrals and this discussion again at that point with any change. So to the use of this piece.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Lionel?
I'm still a little unclear about how you're going to determine that the load you have in your truck that you want to dump in the site has no contamination in it until you dump it. Like, it's very difficult, in our experience, to see that contamination and to know that it's contaminated before you dump it. Unless you test continuously as you load your truck, as you're hydrovacing. We have actually experienced some of this, and that's why I'm asking, and I'm a little bit unclear how you're going to determine you have no contaminants, dump it into this pit that already has material in it, and not contaminate that whole site, so that you have to clean that whole site then, whatever has been disposed of in there in the future, earlier on. I just like that whole process to me. Unless you deliver to Trevita, they test it, which doesn't happen overnight. And then they load it up, bring it to your pit, and then you go through your process. I'm a little confused on how you're going to do that without contaminating existing materials you have in your pits.
So once the material in our pits, or in Roy's pits, are dried, they will be tested before they can be hauled to the landfill. And if they don't test clean, then they will be taken to a Class 2 facility, right? So when we load our trucks, anything on a well site, if we're working on a well site, it gets taken. AER regulations are a lot different than the AEP regulations. They don't operate under the AEP. So if we work on a well site, it's disposed of at the well site or a Class 2 facility. Anything on a well site where there is possibilities of contamination will be taken to a Class 2 facility. When we're digging, say in someone's front yard, in a farmer's field, exposing TELUS lines, ADCO gas lines, or anything like that, if the operator, like I said before, as soon as water hits any contamination, there's always a sheen. You can see it. As we're turning the dirt into a slurry, you see a sheen right away if there's any contamination. And then that's documented right away, and then it's disposed of to the proper location.
Jeff?
And the information that I've received and I have from Alberta Environment is that initial determination is the responsibility of the hydro excavator, the person requesting the hydro excavation, and they're to take into account basically high level information. Much like Albert mentioned, the sheen on the dirt is one thing, but again, what are the adjacent properties? What are the uses of the adjacent properties? Are there pipelines in the area? There's an old car dealership here. They're required to use their best practices and their experience and knowledge to make their determination whether they feel it's hazardous or not, and that's from environment.
Trace?
My question is more around the road to the property, and it talks about the going up to 10 trucks a day in and out, and that you purchase calcium on the side of your parcel. But what is, I guess I don't know the road, but what shape of the road is that? And is this going to increase service levels to maintain the road?
I don't believe it will increase service levels to maintain the road. I believe there's been heavy traffic on this road in the past. From my experience, the road is in good shape. I believe, and I'm not positive, that it's less than half a mile north of Highway 544. No other residents other than Mr. Grossfield between the access and the pavement. So I don't foresee it being an issue, no.
Are we ready? Yes, Yubi.
Is that going to include drilling mud from the drilling rigs? No? Okay.
Brian?
Well, if you had no more questions, I was going to make a motion to approve.
I'm open for a motion. You're making it. Brian moves. No further questions or comments. Then I'm going to ask, all in favor? Opposed? That is passed. Thank you, gentlemen. It was an education for us all. We'll go on to the next one, which is a gravel pit. Shanley.
Yes. Development permit 2019029 is to provide approval for a gravel pit operation. The gravel pit. Should I continue? Okay. The gravel pit is a Category 2 pit, which is defined as a pit that's less than 12.5 acres in size on private land. A Class 2 pit does not require registration with Alberta Environment and does not need to follow the Code of Practice for pits. However, they are required to conserve and reclaim these pits and follow the components of the Water Act. The applicant is not requesting any variances to the land use district. The applicant will utilize the private low-grade gravel road located outside the road allowance for access to the operation. We've added a condition that they have a registered access easement for the use of this road to their gravel pit. The undeveloped government road allowance will be closed and leased to the applicant for his farming operations. There was no issues or concerns from staff. There was no response from ORSC. There was no issues or concerns from adjacent landowners. We're recommending approval with conditions.
Questions? Anne-Marie?
I looked at the map and it looks so close to Crawling Valley, and that has not been mentioned in here, and I'm assuming there was no reply from the EID on that? They have no issues?
There was no reply from the EID. No reply.
Lionel, did you have a question too? No? Yes, Molly.
Mark is here. I'm just curious. This is a completely different area from their other pit that operates or has been that ran into our road and stuff? Oh, I see Jeff knows about it too, so I'll leave Mark alone. Jeff.
Yes, this is a different location. I believe it's about 3/4 of a mile to the southwest. That old gravel pit, we had worked with the colony to fix what had happened. For history to council, the colony had mined portions of the road allowance, portions of a developed county road, realigned the road around their pivot circle off of the road allowance, and yeah. Anyways, regardless, we worked together with the colony. We helped them find an engineering consultant to take a look at the road, what was existing, and they actually went and they rebuilt the road and put it back on road allowance to an acceptable standard to us. And yes, so this is to the southeast, and just we did have some pretty good luck in working with the colony. They understood their mistake and their error, and I think we came to a real good resolution up there.
So, following that experience, this is to be a little pit and to stay little. How is that controlled?
The pit that was just mentioned it cannot be in operation until they meet some Alberta environment protocol, I guess, and so they want to open this one so that they can start mining it until that one can be operational again. And this one has to stay under the 12 acres, otherwise they'll have to go through the Alberta environment again to get to do any more than this 12-acre piece.
And who monitors that? Alberta Environment? Nobody?
There would be no formal inspections on it, obviously. Alberta Environment would monitor it. Alberta Environment and Sustainable Resource Development are catching up on their gravel pit information, and this is, I think, an example of that. This colony is not by far the only organization in the province of Alberta that has outdated reporting to Alberta Environment. I'm glad to say that all of our reporting is up to date on our pits, but there are many people that have outstanding reports, and I think this is just one of those things that they've came through this area, and the colony is working with some consultants to help get the reporting up to date and in line with their requirements.
Molly?
I thank you for that, and I will move approval of this development permit.
Thank you, Molly. Any further discussion or questions? Good. We all in favor? Opposed? None? That is passed. 8.3. Yes.
Development Permit 2019051 is the application for Phase 1 of a 4-phase development to construct a building to be used as a drive-in restaurant and a convenience store. The applicants are proposing to install a freestanding sign that requires a variance to the surface area as well as the setback. So the surface area is a 139 square foot variance, and the setback is a 1 foot variance. There was no issues or concerns from staff. There was no issues or concerns from ORSC. This permit was taken to the IDP, and they suggested that we add a condition for landscaping and curb and gutter on the south side of the parcel. They also sent a letter of recommendation that is included in your package regarding the cost sharing of the County of Newell with the County of Newell to widen 15th Avenue at no cost going to the applicant. Jeff has an RFD that's at council later on today that he can discuss now if you would like. We have a suggested added condition on landscaping to add that as one of the conditions that's not currently there. We are recommending approval with conditions, and Mr. Visser is here to answer questions.
Questions? We run out of questions already? Okay, yes, Wayne.
I'll move.
Wayne moves. Any further discussion? Brian.
Well, I mean, I'm not opposed to this. I just need a little bit more clarification. You mentioned that Jeff has some information later on in our council, but if he could provide that, because it is pertinent to this parcel. So as far as the lane widening and access to that parcel, how will that be dealt with as far as the height of the current the area that's to be developed and the road? It's quite significant in my mind anyways. So
absolutely. So just a little bit further information on the RFD coming to council later today. We had previously talked about cost sharing the installation of traffic signals at 15th Avenue and 2nd Street West. I am in receipt of the draft agreement from Alberta Transportation for the installation of those lights. As well, through that process and in conjunction with it, I think with the same engineer, we're going to look at radius improvements, southbound Highway 873 to a westbound movement onto 15th Avenue. In discussing with the city, we came up with a drawing out of the City of Lethbridge design guidelines that would facilitate the turning movement quite well. We talked about the lane widths and an additional westbound lane as well at a meeting with myself, Alan Martins and Don Sari, and we all agreed that an additional lane wasn't necessary. However, that 3.5 meter wide lane, as the taper would run out at 40 meters going westbound, it would probably be pertinent for us to look at carrying that additional 2 meters all the way to 3rd Street. So that's going to be the recommendation coming forward. As for the grade separation of the existing parcel where the development lies, I've discussed that with Mr. Visser. While they don't have engineered grade plans produced yet, they will be looking at getting those done, and it's definitely going to be an operation that's done in conjunction with their development. I would assume that they will be filling the lot to some degree. The road grade may still be higher than the development. I can't speak to that right now. The estimates that Don and myself came up with that are included in the RFD to council, in my opinion, are a really worst case scenario if the grade was left at existing and we had to run curb and gutter in there, what we would have to do. So I guess long story short, until some lot grading plans have been completed for this development, we won't have an exact idea, but we definitely have been in discussions with the city and the developer, and we want to make sure we're working together, and we think that the engineer that we enlist to design the signalization at the intersection would be well suited to take a look at these radius improvements as well.
So the outfall from the storm, where does that end up? I'm trying to remember in my mind, because I know that lot has suffered, and when there's an intense rainstorm, there's usually some water pooling in it. So I'm curious where it goes to.
And Mark can probably answer this question better than I can, but I'll take a stab at it. The city drainage system all drains to the interlake on the north side of Highway 1. They're through a piped network that is adjacent to that property. So again, in the detailed design phase for the developer, they'll have to take that into consideration along with other utilities and services to reach the parcel and facilitate.
And the discussions have been positive and working well?
Yeah, for sure. Very exciting.
Yep. Okay. There are no further questions. I'm open for a motion. Wayne Maidman? Oh, thank you. Glad somebody's on the ball. Yes, Shanna Lee.
Would MPC like to add the condition of landscaping?
Well, that's what you're recommending, and that's, I think, what is understood as part of the conditions.
Would you like me to read it?
Sure.
Okay. The applicant is required to provide a landscaping plan to the satisfaction of the Planning and Development Department. The landscaping and paved parking area must be completed as approved within 9 months of occupancy of the building, and the landscaping must be maintained for the life of the project, including the replacement of any plant material that dies.
Okay. Any questions on that? If not, all in favor of Wayne's motion? That is passed. Going on to 8.4, Shanna Lee.
Development permit 2019059 is the application for the addition of a shipping container and an ATCO trailer to be used as a security suite with an addition to that for the existing intensive horticultural operation in the hamlet of Rolling Hills. The applicant currently grows the majority of his produce outdoors. He has submitted photographs of these that are included in your package. The applicant is requesting to install a shipping container on his parcel to be used for storage of equipment and produce for the business. He is also requesting to install an ATCO trailer to be used as a security suite to allow him to reside on the parcel when necessary for the business. He will be adding an addition to the security suite to be used to storage of sewer, water, natural gas lines, and electricity for the trailer, as well as office space for the business. There's photos of the ATCO trailer included in your package. Planning and Development recommends the minimum security of $2,500 as a condition of approval to be refunded when the security suite has passed all the Alberta Safety Code requirements. There was no response from ORSC. There was no issues or concerns from staff. There was no response from the Rolling Hills Advisory Committee, and there was no response from adjacent landowners. We're recommending approval with conditions, and Mr. Tompkins is here to answer questions.
Anything to add, Mark? Anything to add? Okay. Questions from MPC? Trace?
My question was just around the security suite. Like, how often would that be used, or what does that actually mean?
Could you repeat the question?
Just in regards to your security suite, like how often would you use it? Like, are you moving in for 3 months at a time? Are you on weekends?
I would be there whenever I'm working on site, and it would be shut down in the wintertime when the garden is not active. But I could be there when I'm dealing with gardening issues, but also I have to work on equipment when I'm not working on the garden, so the garden would be top priority. But I'm doing development at the same time, so there would be a lot of dynamic activity as to what I'm doing at any given time, because I have to develop a property at the same time that I'm growing food.
Further questions? Then I'm ready for a motion. Brian?
I'll make that motion to approve.
Brian makes a motion to approve. No further questions or discussion. All in favor? That is passed.
Thank you.
You've got your hands full. And our last one. We get 10 minutes yet to Pam's 1 hour limit here.
Okay, this one should be easy. Development permit 2019062 is for the approval of an existing attached garage and the construction of a deck with a variance to the rear setback. There was an approved development permit in 1995 for the dwelling. According to the assessment records, an attached garage was constructed at that time, but it was not included in the development permit, which is why we're asking for approval today. The applicant is requesting approval to construct a deck with a 12-foot variance to the rear yard. The applicant is requesting the variance because the rear yard setback is 20 feet in a hamlet residential parcel, and the house is set back only 20 feet. Without a deck, they cannot access their back door. The applicants have provided a photo and the location. They are requesting the deck. There was no response from ORSC. There was no adjacent landowners' responses, no issues from staff, and we're recommending approval with conditions.
And so would I. So. Anne Marie?
I'll make that motion.
Anne Marie makes the motion. All in favor? That is passed. No post-agenda items and nothing in camera, so we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you, ladies. Jeff?
I will call our council meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda is we need a motion to excuse Ellen today. Clarence moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Adoption of the minutes from August the 8th. Hubie will move. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Call for post-agenda items. Kevin, you have...
Madam Reeve, I have one in-camera labor item, please.
Okay. And there is also intermunicipal in-camera item. Any other items for the agenda? Anne-Marie?
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Seeing no one in our audience from the ratepayers group, then we'll move past item 6 on to, we have public hearings that commence at 11:30, of course. And I guess all of those bylaws are about can we do item 8.3 for second and third reading now? Or is that, just trying to figure this out here. Talking to myself. Maria, do you know where you can cut into this agenda? I have one second and third reading for road closure, and the other two have to go to public. And what item is that? 8? Yeah, okay. Let's do it. And that's your only item on this agenda then, after or aside from public hearings? And planning and development at 10. Okay, well, we'll try and get everything done so that all you have left are the public hearings. Item 8.3 is at the top of our agenda, page 2. It's been through the other approvals and to Alberta Transportation, so we can deal with it today.
Okay, so this is this road closure is for a portion of road allowance in the southeast of 172118, so really close to Bizano. It received approval to proceed on March 7th. Public hearing and first reading on April 11th, and we received Alberta Transportation approval on August 29th. It is for, there was no concerns voiced by the landowner. The municipal services wanted a 30-meter road right-of-way, so we accounted for that in the closure area. And the landowner will be responsible for having the area surveyed to ensure the correct placement of the fencing when second and third reading has been passed. So, what else do I have to tell you? It is recommended that Council provide second and third reading for Bylaw 1947-19.
Thank you. Questions? Or a motion? Or Tracy?
No, I was just going to call for second reading.
Okay, Tracy moves second reading. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving to third reading. Wayne moves third reading. All in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Item 8.4 fall into this category as well. Second and third. 1951-19. It's for second and third reading, so I'm assuming we're good to go. No, take your time. Do you want to turn your mic on, please?
Okay, so the purpose of this application is to close that road allowance between the northwest of 17, 1616 west of the 4th, and the northeast of 18. 1616 west of the 4th meridian, as shown on the attached map. And I'll pull that up again. So the landowner has installed an irrigation pivot, which you can't see on this map. It's new, and that road closure is to facilitate that new pivot. There was no concerns from any of the neighboring landowners. We received Alberta Transportation approval on July 12th, 2019, and we recommend that Council provide second and third reading for this bylaw.
Thank you. Clarence?
Move second reading.
Clarence moves. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And for third and final reading, Lionel moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We'll go to item 10.1 from there, which is the Planning and Development Report, and see if anyone has any questions. I had to tell you, I love your little trivia things. and this report, an update on what's going on in this land use amendment from our last meeting. Pictures? Thought it was great.
Okay.
And I did wonder, so about if this person that willed this to Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau was a fan or not a fan.
Well, I can't speak to that, but I did hear, if we're going to talk about the rumor, that it was somebody from Bow City that had a lot in Patricia and willed that to the Prime Minister. So
didn't know if that was a reward or punishment, or what his feeling was about it, but interesting. Any questions for Maria? No questions, then we can move. We need a motion to accept the Planning and Development Report for this month. Kelly will move that. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And item 10.2, Subdivision Extension Request.
Okay, we received a request and payment for a subdivision extension that was applied for in 2018. It is lands that is former rail bed northeast of the hamlet of Patricia. The AD acquired it. We have actually been somewhat involved in this in working with the adjacent landowners in trading some land to help facilitate our existing maintained road network to fall on county road allowance and off of their property. So there's a little bit of land swapping going on. Regardless, they tried to register it at land titles without a formal survey by description, and that was rejected. So the reason for this extension is so Mr. Christensen can get out there and do a formal survey to have it registered at land titles.
Anne Marie?
Since the county was involved in this land swap and there was quite a few more that needed to be subdivided and consolidated, is it fair to let them pay $325 for an extension request?
That's a good question. I hadn't been involved in the inner workings of this. The real subdivision is actually turning the land back to the landowners. The reason the county did get involved with it was because the EID actually were the ones running with it. They obtained the rail bed, and at that time they questioned us as to whether we had any issues or concerns with this, and that's when we brought up that we would appreciate swapping some land and having a look at the road allowance being rearranged. So I don't know that the county has done anything to inhibit the progression of this subdivision application, but I think consideration could definitely be given because the road plan that does need to be registered and whatnot to facilitate it is part of a deal with the county, but that would be council's decision on that. I could see reasoning for it, but I don't think the county's done anything to hinder.
Claire?
And who tried to do it without a formal survey?
Not the county.
Right. And that's the reason for the extension.
Because this goes back to April of 2018. So, yeah. Tracy?
What was the time frame on, like, when did the county get involved? How long have you been involved in this process?
I was involved on the outside. I made contact with the adjacent landowner, Mr. Irwin, to help negotiate a land swap. No aerial photo. Anyways, we have two roads coming off of this speed curve here, and as well here, I believe. Anyways, this road was never on a county road allowance. It went across private property, this parcel here. So we're registering this road plan and swapping it for some land that the county owned up here that was adjacent to the neighbor's land. So my involvement previously had been just facilitating signatures and discussing with the landowners the land swap.
Kelly?
Do you have a motion at this point? If not, I'd be willing to make a motion.
No, we need a motion.
I so move.
Kelly's motion is to approve the subdivision extension request. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Item 10.3, can we continue into that? Seeing as you guys are here and you got to be here for a bit longer till 11:30, so.
That would be phenomenal.
Yes.
So attached to the agenda is the draft IDP between the County of Newell and the City of Brooks. Dillon Consulting Limited was hired by the County of Newell in, I believe, October of 2018 to help facilitate a number of intermunicipal development plans between the county, the City of Brooks, the Village of Rosemary, as well as our adjacent neighbor, Cypress County, and special areas. City of Brooks IDP has been an ongoing process that I got into earlier this year. We've had many meetings with Dillon Consulting. We had Orsk involved in the process at the beginning of it. When I came into it, we had a couple of meetings, very good discussion with the members that were part of that group. We've went through a number of iterations and we've got the document back. I just want to highlight a few of the key changes for this IDP that are being recommended from the last IDP. Probably the biggest change that we have going forward on this IDP is the adjustment to the IDP area. Previously, the IDP area with the city of Brooks extended over a mile in most directions around the city. It extended out Joanne Trucking Road to incorporate all of the industrial type subdivisions out there. And what was found by previous people in the Planning and Development Department, and as well myself looking at it, is it created a lot of circulations that really didn't affect the city in a way that this document's meant to help. There were a lot of circulations that were far beyond the reaches of city services, future city expansion, and things like that were going to the committee, and in our opinion, the administration's opinion, were really unnecessary and sometimes a waste of time. So we have shrunk the IDP boundary in this draft to roughly half a mile surrounding the city. We've taken out some of those further outlying areas in discussion with Dylan as well as the city, and we're quite confident that the area we're drilling down on is going to be much more efficient in planning and development with us. The referral process is the next thing that we changed. Previous referrals are sent to the other municipality for placement on an IMDP agenda, which happens once a month. Again, with the number of applications coming in and the complexity of those applications going to that meeting, we felt that possibly for about 95% of them, they don't even warrant a meeting. While they do warrant comments and circulations, we think a more efficient way to do that would be via email, as opposed to getting everybody together in one room to sit down and talk about it. So we are suggesting that these circulations be circulated between administration. That particular administration, in receipt of a referral, will then forward it to their committee members for comments. At that time, from any referral, either municipality would have the opportunity to call a meeting of the IMDP committee or respond via email. Now what this does is hopefully it lessens meeting times, it lessens people at meetings, it frees up some time for us to be efficient on some other projects and processes, and it also quickens up timelines for developers. If we get an application next week, well, it's not going to the IDP meeting until October, and then coming back to MPC following that, so it could definitely be a hindrance on those things. So we feel with this mechanism, we still have the opportunity to call a meeting when a meeting's necessary, and we have the opportunity to be more efficient when that's the preferred method as well. The other thing that was discussed quite heavily is we've added some policies surrounding entrance and exit corridors to the city. I know there's been lots of discussion surrounding entranceways and landscaping. We just heard a development permit during MPC from Canalta where landscaping was one of the comments that we received back. So what we're doing in this IDP is we're identifying key entrance corridors, we're identifying parcels in those key entrance corridors to let us know that these are the parcels that could be affected for visual appearance of things. This IDP document is not pinning us down to anything. Rather, it's saying that we will strive to work with the city and we shall review our policies and processes surrounding entrance corridors, landscaping features, and whatnot. I just want to really point out that this document is not saying what we are going to enforce and how we are going to enforce it. It's saying that we are going to work with the city to come to agreement, and we will each review our own policies surrounding that to help make better decisions going forward. And to add on top of that, that's not going to be something that administration would run willy-nilly with. Research would be done. We would confer with council on different ways and different opinions of what these entrance corridors and requirements should look like. Those are the three largest changes to the document that I wanted to point out today. I also should point out that, as I mentioned, ORSC hadn't been involved in this project after I got involved because it was noted that it would be a fee for service for their involvement in this project, and I couldn't reasonably pay 2 consultants to formulate our IDP for us. We did request a few times for the document to be reviewed by ORSC, and it was. Attached to your agenda package is a memo received from ORSC to Council with some general comments and some specific comments on the IDP. Unfortunately, administration was unable to meet with ORSC to discuss their comments because we did have some of the same comments and we drew some of the same conclusions. We did have a chance to meet with Dylan, and I apologize that I provided an update to the RFD yesterday afternoon with some of the comments surrounding ORSC's memo and what administration thoughts were on it. And I would be happy to go through any and all of those that Council would be interested in hearing. Or if there's any specific questions on them, we can definitely go at it that way as well. I was truly hoping we could come here with a unified recommendation to Council and tell Council what was in the best interest of the county, and I think we've done our best to do that. So I'm open for any comments or questions or suggestions that we ride through this here today.
Kelly?
So for me, Jeff, I been through this with Pisano, and it was clearly stated in the document how we're going to work together. So what Pisano's going to provide and what the county is going to access to them for their input. And I couldn't find that the city, I felt like the document was talking all about the county. Even the mapping was all about the county and not showing the fringe or the city limits and what they're putting into the partnership. That's how I felt about it.
Absolutely, and you know, with my limited experience in planning and development, I really felt that way too. When I first took a look at the document, I thought, wow, the county really seems to be giving a lot on this document. But you know, we sat down and we went through the meetings and we had a lot of discussions, and the long and short story of it is that while this is a joint partnership document, that the area that is truly in question in here falls within the county limits. The city will be expanding or should be expanding. This plan is for the city and the county to work together on possible annexation, growth strategies, development around the city limits, not to inhibit or take anything away or put something in place that could cost us later, right? So I did agree with that, and at the beginning of this project, I was pretty persistent on the exact same thing. Where is the urban referral area? What is that urban referral area? And you will notice in reading through the documents, we do have a few comments that some definitions need to be tightened up and things like that. But this document, the way it was approached is that we're inserting policies here on how we're going to work together and how we can foster each other's development, right? So there's not much for actually specific requirements. I think this document will work very well in conjunction with other planning and development documents. I think this document will give us good direction on how we need to look at and assess our land use bylaw and the zoning and the uses within the IDP area, and if changes need to be made to those. But I didn't see it as being the document that tells us what we will and won't do, other than, you know, there is that section 1.3 that defines the use of should, shall, will, and may. And we're very cognizant going through there which of those words we were using on specific policies and specific points, because I guess we didn't in this document want to tie us down to what our landscaping requirements would be through these entrance corridors. We want to ensure that we can open the discussion and foster discussion surrounding it and implement it and have policies surrounding it, but we didn't want to tie ourselves down.
So I'm just going to add a little bit to what Jeff is talking about. This is the first draft that council will be looking at. My understanding is that there will be some changes proposed from the city level, so I wouldn't get too caught up on this being the total package at this point in time. But if there are things that you want added in or considered, this is a perfect opportunity to be able to do that.
You know, this little discussion just all of a sudden struck me in the head. We've got this fringe boundary around the city. Why isn't there a fringe boundary inside the city which also affects the county? Somebody can probably add an answer to that, but it seems, you know.
And I agree, and there is an urban referral area. The city would be, in this document, required to refer any development, subdivision, a number of land use bylaw amendments, statutory plan amendments to the county that affected anything adjacent to the county boundary, a county roadway, things like that. That is about as far into the city as we went. The previous IDP was the same. It didn't show any far-reaching areas into the city. It was really adjacent properties to the boundary, as well as any connector roads and such that would affect the county. Our thoughts in the formulation of this document, we had a tough time. Like I say, in the first meeting, I sat down here and looked at this IDP. I said, well, this is great, but where's the urban referral area, and what are they referring to us? So we have tried to pick that up in the text, and like I say, if there are thoughts, and like Kevin mentioned, if there is things that we want to see changed, or we feel that things deeper within the city and the development of those or the amendments to those statutory plans are going to affect the county, we can definitely follow down there.
I'll just add a little bit. My experience in watching this stuff all come together is a result of the urbans and the issue around development around urbans, rather than from the county perspective. I'm not too aware of many issues that counties have raised from development within city boundaries. So while it can happen, I don't think that these documents, in my view, are urban-based, and they're to make sure that everybody agrees on something around the perimeter of the urban centers, so that there are no problems that pop up, or at least you minimize the problems that pop up.
Any other feedback? Wayne?
I see one concern that where the city could be developing residential areas. We have a feedlot just on the north side of Brooks there, and the city has been pushing residential closer and closer to it, and then all of a sudden we're going to start hearing complaints about smell and stuff. It wasn't the feedlot operator that moved, it's the city, and they have other areas where they could be. This would be something that we could talk with them and discuss, because they approve these residential areas and they encroach on agricultural areas.
Jeff?
Totally agree on that. I mean, the NRSCB does regulate feedlots. They regulate the setbacks for residential development around feedlots and such. The IDP being presented here today does talk about feedlots in the IDP area. Obviously, we're in this document, we are not in support of new feedlots being developed in the IDP area. We would listen to the talks of expansion of a feedlot. You know, if there was suitable information or you know, some new technology or things being done to help mitigate some of the outside effects, we could look at considering the expansion. So I mean, that's where we've gone with feedlots, and like I say, a lot of the development adjacent to it is regulated by the NRCB. How far residential, commercial, industrial, recreational can be located to those facilities.
Which is a good thing, that it's the NRCB.
Yes.
Any other feedback for Jeff? So Jeff, how many times will we see this into the future? Do you have any guesses? I mean, I know a lot of it has to do with us.
I'd like to say one, but that
as in one more.
One more, yes. That may not be necessary. You know, some things have came to light, and I've been made aware of a few things that, you know, maybe we will have some more iterations. Kevin mentioned the city has had a chance to review it, and I haven't yet to communicate with them to see what their stance is and how they see us going forward. It might be great to put this on our MDP agenda for next week to have that discussion. And see what the results of their review was. So I think that would be great to look at that. I also think it would be great, you know, if council does have specific comments, questions, concerns, things that they would like implemented, things that they see in here that they don't like. Any of that information would be great to pass along to myself or Maria in the interim. But I kind of see it going back to the IDP committee and seeing what the city's thoughts are. We have an IDP in place with the city, so it's not completely detrimental that we get this done by the MGA regulated deadlines. I mean, I don't want to drag it out. I don't like dragging anything out, but it's not our critical path. Next meeting, we'll be looking at Rosemary IDP, and that one is our critical path because we don't have one existing. The stall with the Rosemary IDP is they don't have an MDP either. So in conjunction with this IDP formulation with Rosemary, they are working with Dillon Consulting at formulating an MDP at the same time.
Right.
So like I say, I would like to place it on IMDP committee agenda next week to get comments back and have that discussion. And I would welcome any comments, concerns, or questions that could be provided to the department in the meantime.
And I think there will be some feedback from the city. Anything else on that item? Perfect timing, or were you going to say something, Clarence? Okay, I'll allow that. We will. Oh, yes.
I would like that the County of Newell Council, it was addressed to the County of Newell Council. I think it should have been addressed to our staff who are working on it.
Our planning and development staff rather than to us. All right, there'll be further discussion later. We will leave item 10.3 then, and as Jeff said, continue to look at it if there's feedback for it. And we'll go to our public hearings, which are commencing at 11:30. So item 7 on our agenda. And the first thing we need is a motion to move into public hearings. Lionel will move that. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And item 7.2, Bylaw 1956-19 is a road closure and lease. And we'll pass it back to our planning staff to fill us in on the details.
Okay. So this application is to close and lease an approximate 4 acres of road allowance between the east half of 2318 and the west half of 2318. There is an existing road that is built, but it's not. It's all on private property. It's not located in the road allowance at all. This road allowance is this closure, pardon me, is part of the gravel pit operation that was just approved at MPC. So the road is currently being farmed by the adjacent landowner. So this closure will facilitate that farming operation. The approval to proceed with the road closure and lease was provided at the July 11th council meeting. This bylaw was advertised for 2 consecutive weeks and circulated to adjacent landowners and required referral agencies, and we have not heard any objections to the road closure. So it is recommended by staff that, providing that no issues arise from the public hearing, that council provide first reading to the road closure bylaw 1956-19.
Thank you. Questions? Any questions from council on this particular public hearing? So you can get all the information you need? No? All right, we'll move on to item 7.3, Bylaw 1957-19.
So this application is to close the road allowances on the north section and the south section of that portion of road. So council just provided second and third reading for bylaw 1951-19, which was to close that road to allow for an existing pivot. That pivot is also going on those other sections of road. So just to clean that up and make sure that everything is being accounted for that's being irrigated under the pivot. So this location is approximately 5 miles southwest of Rainier, and that entire section of road is cut off by the river, so it's not part of the road allowance grid system at all. The adjacent landowner would like to close and lease those portions as well. So this bylaw 1957-19 was advertised for 2 consecutive weeks and circulated to adjacent landowners. We did not hear any objections to this road closure. So it is recommended by staff that, providing that no issues arise from the public hearing, that council provide first reading to the road closure bylaw 1957-19.
Thank you. Questions? Anne-Marie? The 2 pieces that we're talking about now, why were they not included originally in the road closure? And I wonder if that had to do with access to the river, so that's one point. And the second point is the bottom part would be part of the pivot, but the top part is not.
Yeah, so the bottom part actually isn't affected by the pivot. So the pivot you can't see on here. It's a new install. So the base of the pivot is right, just a little bit south, Jeff, like right around there. So it's getting that portion. So also the north portion of that road is being irrigated. So that south portion is just to close that entire road to just clean it up. The reason that these were not included previously was because the adjacent land on both that north portion and the south portion are Crown land. And at the time of the original road closure, it was under the understanding of the department that that road could not be closed because of the adjacent land being owned by the Crown. I did a little bit of further investigation, and Alberta Transportation and Alberta Environment and Parks did say that that road was able to be closed. So I thought it was in the best interest to close all portions that were being used by the landowner so that there was nothing that could happen in the future.
Brian?
I think you answered it, but I'm just going to ask us very specifically. So Township Road 163, which is the road that, east-west road that gives access to the river, how is that going to be affected, and how is access going to be maintained to the river through 163, Township Road 163, or will this in fact cut off that chance of access?
So the road that is used to access the homestead is a road plan. It's not part of the grid. So that's why it ends there. As far as access to the river, there is no way to get to that portion of road allowance through the grid system now. So I guess the Crown would get access. Well, they have no access currently except for the neighboring river. So the closure of that road allowance would not affect the access that they don't have currently. If that makes sense.
So I'm just trying to wrap my head around the grid system normally would give access to the river. When did we remove that, or when was the Crown remove that grid from Township Road 163 that would give access to the river? I'm a little confused at that point.
I think Jeff knows.
So when the grid system was surveyed, we know that east-west we have a range road every mile, and north-south we have a township road every 2 miles. So those township roads in the typical grid system fall on the 0, the 2, the 4, and then the 0 again for the next township. Anything on 1, 3, or 5 would be a forced road allowance that would have been subdivided and a road plan registered. Probably, I'm guessing, at the time of the development of this farmyard, they would have registered that and hopefully built it to county standards, and we would have taken it over. So if that was 16.2 will hit the river and 16.4 will hit the river, but 16.3 will not hit the river. This is actually Township Road 16.3 is directly west of that Township Road 16.3 that we dealt with a few years back for the Scandrup development adjacent to the EID canal. Again, a forced road allowance that was never on the grid that we had to go and survey and register.
Thanks, Jeff. As soon as you said odds and evens, the light bulb went on. So thank you very much.
Any other questions in regards to these two public hearings? Seeing none, we need a motion to move out of public hearing. Kelly will move that. All in favor? Opposed? And that takes us to Bylaw 1956-19 for first reading of that. Wayne, you're moving that. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And for 8.2, Bylaw 1957-19, road closure and lease, the first reading for that. Anne Marie moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. So, Planning Department, I think we're good for now.
Perfect.
Nothing else for now? All right. and keeping us on track pretty good. I'd forgotten Cole was coming. I looked out and saw you, and I went, oh, there you are, 11:45 on our agenda. Please join us. And this is item 11.1 on our agenda.
Thank you, Reeve Douglas and Council. So as you can see by my report, it's fairly small again, which is a good thing. So normal operations were observed in the hamlet distribution systems and wastewater systems. We're going to be doing a fall distribution system flushing in Tilly and Lake Newell Resort in the coming month. That's part of our regular, routinely biannual maintenance for those two distribution systems. In the County of Newell rural drinking water system, everything is rolling along as normal, so normal operations were observed in that. In wastewater collection, we installed the rebuilt lift pump at Lake Newell Resort's lift station. Just came from there this morning, so that is being done as we speak. We noticed that some infrastructure deficiencies in there, so we're currently replacing some components of it with stainless steel due to corrosion and stuff like that. That's normal wear and tear over the course of the life of a lift station, so we're currently doing that as we speak. And we're planning on doing the same thing at Rolling Hills lift station. Especially Rolling Hills, it's known for a highly corrosive atmosphere in that lift station, so it happens a little more often, but like I said, it's normal and it's part of the life cycle of a facility like that. We also expect to discharge the Scandia Lagoon via irrigation in the coming weeks. He never did that at all during the regular season, so growing season, so he's going to do it now that he's got it all harvested or cut, whatever he's got on there, I can't remember, but he plans on doing that before the end of the year or the end of the fall year, whatever. So that basically covers everything that we've had over the last month. If there's any questions.
Thanks, Cole. Questions? Wayne.
Just a comment. This isn't bad, but it's really boring. Like, you never have any problems, really. So, just a comment and a congratulations, because you really run a good operation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. But we work really hard to keep it that way. We try to stay on top of maintenance so we don't have any big problems. So hopefully it puts a smile on my face if I come here and I don't really have much to say, other than I have to scramble to put something on it. But like I said, it's all part and parcel to running a good operation, and I appreciate you making that comment. Thank you.
So often, Brian, go for it. No, go ahead.
My comments or my question is in regards to the Scandia discharge. Because that's on a pivot, what parameters determine when it's released? I guess in my mind, I'm always thinking that as a crop's growing, that's the best time for those nutrients to be used on a pivot situation when the effluent or your has to be released or discharged. So I'm just curious, like what the process is and why it's released basically post-growing season rather than during the growing season.
I don't know what his mindset is on that. Mr. Shackleton in Rolling Hills doesn't do that. He does it during the growing season. But the last 2 years, I believe it's Christensen that did, correct me if I'm wrong. Or Peterson, sorry. So he's chose to do it after the fact, later in the year, and I don't know what his mindset is on that. As far as the rules go, he's within the rules to do whenever. It just as long as it's done by, I believe it's the end of October, beginning of November in that area. So I don't know why he's choosing to do it later. It's just basically a why in the feed. So he's either on EID water or the lagoon, and he's just chosen to use EID water up until now. So you're welcome.
My question or comment was just that often you sort of have things from the summer, this season of summer to talk about. This year, obviously, there wasn't a lot of heat with big consumptions of water some years?
We haven't had the huge peaks like we've had in the past, but we've been steady with a high average throughout the course of every month up until now. So when you look back at our water usage over the last few years, we're probably on the higher end of it over the last 5, but we just haven't seen huge peaks and valleys in it. It's just been slow and steady. So
okay,
it's been good all around. So no complaints.
Perfect. Anything else? No. Well, thank you, Cole. Have a good rest of the day and rest of summer because it's not fall yet, right?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right. Seeing as Cole has finished, we will move to item 10.6 because I see Mr. Stabler is here, so we should see if we can get through that before our lunch break. Item 10.6, request to consider submitting a resolution to rural municipalities of Alberta. I'll just find that on my agenda. And Lane to introduce this, please.
I had prepared a brief cover report to introduce this particular item. I think it's fairly explanatory. If there's any questions that I need to address, I can certainly attempt to do that. But it is before council for discussion here this morning.
All right. Councillor questions. Questions, Brian?
So I can't help but think about the Tilly, when Tilly was going through dissolution, and we engaged people out in Tilly. Would this type of a resolution be, if this was to become part of the MGA, would that incorporate, would that have to be asked of both communities, both municipalities prior to that process? I guess that's a question for Kevin or Lane or both.
So just so I'm clear, you're asking if there would have to be 2 plebiscites before the dissolution of a community?
Yeah. So my understanding of the request is specific to amalgamation and not dissolution. But Mr. Stabler could probably clarify that. I believe that's the intent is specific to amalgamation and not specific to dissolution.
For us?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for having me speak. This resolution, basically the bit of a background for it, to move from regionalization to amalgamation, there's one word missing in between there. In order to make the leap from regionalization to amalgamation, at some point in time, it may only take a second, you have to have dissolution. During any dissolution of anything, you must and shall have a vote of the affected taxpayers. The AGM was changed back in 2015, and all or any wording pertaining to taxpayers' rights or freedoms was removed. All I want to do is have the rights and freedoms of taxpayers in any municipality put back in to amalgamation, whereas at this point it doesn't exist. Right now you'd be no different situation than Tilly coming into the county, because we're moving from regionalization to amalgamation. In order to amalgamate, you have to dissolve what you have right here and now. So because you have to dissolve what you have now, so you can join Brooks or Bassano or Tabor or any other county, you have to dissolve what you have. So the word should be regionalization, dissolution, amalgamation, thereby giving everybody the rights and freedoms that they deserve, both councillor-wise, municipally-wise, county-wise, and taxpayer-wise. Everybody is dealt with evenly right across the board. Right now, the way it sits, amalgamation rules out taxpayers. And that's wrong, because they're the ones in the end are going to pay the bill. That's why it's worded the way it is. And that would give also direction to the sitting councillors as to which way to go. They know exactly what their taxpayers want, need, and hope for. Right now, you could go ahead without any of that. You wouldn't have to speak to any taxpayer. You'd have the freedom to go do all this. And in the end, the councillor wouldn't be paying the bill, the taxpayers pay the bill. So in order to circumvent that, the vote should be there like it is under dissolution, the same as Tilly had a vote to go forward or not. I don't know if that helps it or muddies the waters or what.
Wayne.
For Kevin or Wayne, when Tilly dissolved, did they have to have a vote, or was that up to the council to decide, or could have council just decided to do it?
With the process that Tilly went through, there was a voluntary vote that was taken by the residents. It wasn't a binding plebiscite. If this was to go through the way I understand the intent, it would have been necessary for there to have been a formal, legal, legislated plebiscite. What happened in Tilly did not meet that intent.
And that would also have required a vote of the County of Newell residents then too?
No.
Is that?
No. Whoever, any municipality that wants to do something, that municipality has to vote. In Tilly's case, they were the only ones that wanted to do anything. The County of Newell wasn't dissolving anything. In fact, they're increasing. So there's no onus on their part to do anything. The onus is on the municipality that wants to dissolve. They're the only ones that have the vote. In this case, you had 5 municipalities to begin with. So in essence, you're going to dissolve 5 municipalities into 1. 2 of them dropped out, so now you got 3 municipalities that want to dissolve and go into 1 under the umbrella of amalgamation. And I think the word plebiscite should also be stricken from any record anywhere because, like you say, there is no legal binding thing. So even if people come forward and say we're 95.6% against the way it reads because it's not legally binding, the council or the municipality at that time can say, well, no, we're going to disregard that and we're going to go ahead anyway. I don't want that to happen.
Yeah. This is deeper for me than I thought. Kelly.
The piece that I think you're overlooking when you read the MGA, and I want to point out that it's very clear that consultation is involved with almost everything that we do. In fact, the edits to the MGA strengthened ratepayer input into the operation of this municipality. So I hear what the piece that you're pulling out, but you're also missing that it's all through the MGA that we are to consult with our ratepayers.
That part is fine and okay, but there's still no guarantee that even with consultation, you have to follow any of that. So you can consult every taxpayer in the county and have all of them tell you yes or no, which depending on the topic, in this case is amalgamation. And if there's enough people saying no, hopefully you'd vote with them, but there's no law or rule that says you have to. So therefore the door is wide open, so that even though you consult with everybody and everybody's on board to go against, you have every right to say, no, we're going to go the other way. I don't want that to happen.
And my reply to that, sir, if I could, is that through the chair, is that there are really only 3 guarantees in life. The MGA is very, it's a framework. It's not a directive. And so what Mr. Stabler is suggesting is a clear directive. I would just like to suggest that.
Also, I look at this, if we went this right, it boxing us in, because what if we did have a plebiscite or a referendum and 25% of the population decided to vote? Are we then 75% of the people who decided they didn't want to vote or whatever, for whatever reason, then don't have a say, whereas we've got 10 people around the council can make decisions. I personally probably would not go against that vote, but in future councils, they will get boxed into an area where they can't move, and that's not good either.
I want to clarify the amendment that Mr. Stabler has here that is in our package. Is this indeed an amendment to something that is written in the MGA right now?
Correct.
And so what does it say in the MGA right now in regards to this? What actually is the change of words? I know Kevin and Lane are looking feverishly perhaps to find, like, I just don't know.
Maybe I can clarify a little bit. When I talked to Municipal Affairs, I asked them what's the process here? How do we fix, change, or modify? He says, no, according to the MGA right now, just on the amalgamation part, there's absolutely nothing in there. There's no wording at all in there other than consultation. That's it.
Okay, so
whereas in dissolution, it's almost spelled out, almost just about what I have in there. And the fact that you have to, at some point in time, you're going to have to go through dissolution of something, whether it's dissolution of this, dissolution of Brooks, dissolution of Bassano, dissolution of, you have to get through the dissolution of it in order to make the amalgamation happen. To jump from regionalization to amalgamation, still somewhere you're dissolving something that's already there. So just because the fact they left that word out, I have the understanding that you're circumventing the sort of the process. We're not worried about dissolution because there's a different set of rules for that than there are for amalgamation.
Kevin, do you have any information that might help?
Well, Division 7 of the MGA is dissolution, and so the sections that apply to amalgamation is Division 5. And there are different rules for requirements between dissolution of a municipality that is dissolving into another municipality. Amalgamation is a group of municipalities coming together to form a new municipality. It's different circumstances, but my understanding from the RFD was that it was dealing with Division 5 of the MGA amalgamation and not Division 7, because they're two different sections that would have to be amended accordingly. So I understood it was specific to amalgamation because dissolution basically covers off. The minister may require a vote under dissolution, okay, right? And my understanding from Mr. Stabler was that he wanted the section required under amalgamation, right, to require a vote.
Right. I think it would make it easier for everybody, no matter what the situation is, that you know to go through this process, because the same thing can happen even after amalgamation if 2 or 3 municipalities want to withdraw. They have to go through dissolution. And it's another process and all that stuff, and you have a vote and everything else. Just so everything is clear to everybody involved, if this amendment was put forward, then there's no question.
Yeah, so they would have to go through formation.
Yes.
Again, not dissolution, right? But so if there's a hamlet that decides to be a village, they have to go through the formation order of a municipality. Yep. The same as a portion of a municipality wants to become a village or a town or a city. Yep.
So this is the part that's in quotation marks in our document here is what would be added to Division 5. Is that correct to say? That this would be a brand new statement in under Division 5 of amalgamation. Okay, go ahead. Any other questions? Anne-Marie?
I'm not ready to take this resolution to the September of Foothills Little Bow. It just does not give us enough time. And so I would make the motion for option 2 that we're going to discuss it some more and see what other options may be available to us.
Any questions on that? I certainly feel as though I'm more confused now than I was earlier, so I think I like that idea to look at. For me, I need more time. Clarence?
Well, I think it's always dangerous to look at a particular situation, which we are in right now, and start making recommendations on what's very emotional at this point in time. None of us are legal people.
Right.
I'm always worried when we make additional rules and regulations and laws that we affect something that we didn't intend to affect. And so right now I'm really with that. I think we need some legal opinions, we need some further study on it and see what ramifications it actually has. When we look at our situation right now, I know, Dave, you were at our meeting in Rolling Hills, and we talked about having a vote, and I said I would bring that forward. And as this progresses, that may or may not happen, but I will bring it forward and we will talk about it. But that's kind of related to this. And, I'm just not sure of all the ramifications at this point in time of what we're doing. And we've all been to different into the annual meetings of our association, which is RMA, and a lot of times I feel that the research hasn't been adequate, and you have to vote one way or another, and I don't want to do that. So I think Anne-Marie's motion is good. I think we have to have a very thorough understanding of what it is. I think we have to try to divorce ourselves in the particular situation we are in right now and say, okay, on a general scale of things, is this good or is this not good? We've had a major redo of the Act and just recently, as you pointed out, and it wasn't brought up then. That doesn't mean that it shouldn't be brought up now, but it's definitely the Act has been looked at and it didn't come forward. Why wasn't it brought forward? What are the holes in it? That's what we're looking at now. So I think I could support what Anne-Marie is saying. I don't think I could support right now with the notice that we've had, with all the things that are going on, and the preparation that we have made to bring this thing forward to Little Bow, which is the first step. I don't think we'd be responsible without knowing the total ramifications.
Just a further comment to that is this would have its own process. It's not going to happen overnight. This is our first opportunity in the fall to have something put forward. And again, in the spring, there's another one. And it would each or any of those things, it's decided, the municipalities decide if they want to support this or not. I've talked with Rosemary, and just over a phone call is, oh yeah, come on, we'll rubber stamp it and send it on through AUMA. So I've got one avenue going through there. I'm next talking to the County of Taber, and maybe they'll take it up. You're certainly welcome to decide whatever you decide. But just so you know, I am pushing this forward no matter what. We have recently got some new residents in the County of Newell, that are from Sterling, Ontario. And they moved in, and they're just actually not too far away from where you live, Clarence. And I went over to ask them to come to one of the meetings, and I told him what the meeting's about. He says, "Oh no, don't even go there." So they've lived through amalgamation, and not good. But that's another topic and everything else. I'd hope that the county that I live in would support this, knowing it's not going to change anything you do here tomorrow, next week, or anything else. All looking for support to have this done, because in the end, it's not going to be any of us here deciding that's going to go in. The Rural Municipalities group is going to decide that, and once it's decided there, yes, no, or maybe, if it's yes, it'll move on in the end, and it gets to the minister's office. Once it's in the minister's office, then Minister Madu can have the final say, yes or no. So study if you will, if you want, but I don't think there's really not much studying to do. You said you're gonna push for a vote anyway, so you're not gonna be doing anything different than what's gonna be in here, with the exception that now if somebody wants to follow this, they shall have a vote, rather than we might have a vote. That's the difference of it. And to me, without that vote, is almost criminal to miss that section, to not allow for that thing to happen. That's just my opinion.
Thanks, Dave. I have sat and listened at our conventions to resolutions that have not, as Clarence points out, I haven't gained a solid understanding of this today, which I would really like myself, this is for me, to be able to do some reading in the MGA and see where this fits in. And so I don't think I could vote to just go with this today, but I think we should leave it on our agenda, and as Anne-Marie points out, we can do some more research and bring it back. If that was is that your motion, Anne-Marie, basically, to further research this suggestion?
And also the other options that may be available.
Oh, okay. So the motion then would be to further research this recommendation and to look at other options that may be available to ensure residents of a municipality have an opportunity to provide meaningful input on matters that may affect the long-term future of the municipality. That's part of the suggestions that Lane put in there. Any other comments or no? Okay, I'll call the question then. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Okay, so we will bring it back to our table. And I certainly know myself, I will do some further work so I understand this better. The MGA is not, like all government stuff, is often hard to decipher, and as Kevin points out, there's lots of different sections, so we'll do some research. Thank you for being here. All right, I think we will stop for lunch and reconvene at 1? 1 good? Okay. I'll call the meeting back to order and welcome Catherine and Joe to report to us today, which is sort of nice to have different faces here. How's the summer been? Good. All right, we'll just let you take it away. Item 9.1 on page 2 or 3 of our agenda. Go ahead.
Okay. we'll just start with the report. Our roadside mowers are on their second pass, and they should be on the south side by next Tuesday. The south side and the number 1. Our spraying projects are pretty much all done, but looking at some trials with some downy brome and foxtail with some esplanade there. We're starting to winterize our sprayers and handguns and spray trucks, getting into that season. The mowing, keeping up with the mowing's been pretty easy in the hamlets, but we'll hit everything one more time. We kept on a few seasonal employees for an extra month just to take care of some other projects we've had. And we've lost Emerson to our finance department, but that's good for him, I guess. He gets to stay around here for a year or so, or a little longer. We're going to clean up the truck route just east of Brooks there. We're going to start on that project here right away. And we're going to move some trees from out there into our yard in here. Cellar spraying for one potato producer next week. And we finished the swath canola survey for the club route. Club route sniffing dogs are coming to Brooks, to the county and the Brooks in mid-September here. And TD 3-day event, September 14th in Scandia, 9:30 start. And Emerson Bridge campground closes on the 16th. We had a great season, not a record, but it was still great. So we met with a service provider down there to determine a better way to get some cell reception into the park. There's a few problems quickly noted, and some adjustments can be made. We may need another tower down there with time. So, yeah.
Thanks, Joe. What's happening in Scandia? And
the TD Bank does a 3-day where volunteers go out and plant trees. We have the trees sitting out here ready to go. So.
And that's the 12th?
No, that's the 14th of September.
Next Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Questions for Joe? Brian?
Phragmites, what kind of a year? We haven't heard much about them. What's the weed situation in regards to that invasive one?
I went and checked on them about 2 weeks ago, the one that we sprayed down by the tracks, and there's been absolutely no regrowth, so we won't have to spray it this year, which is awesome. So, and then the one in the city hasn't had regrowth. This is the second year that we haven't had to spray it, so it looks really good.
That, because you guys went to Medicine Hat to do some too. That
yeah,
city,
the Medicine Hat one, they so they did it a little bit different. They chopped it down and then they left it laying where they had chopped it. So we bagged ours. So there was quite a bit of regrowth. Actually, the spot that we sprayed had spread. So there is regrowth there. But the special use approval takes a while to get. So we'll have to wait on that to go back to Medicine Hat to spray that, because there is water sitting in that area where ours there is no water. So we could go ahead and spray it without the special use approval.
So the club route sniffing dogs, you said, are going to be in the community?
Yes, they're coming in from New Brunswick. I believe they're flying them in, and I believe they're going to be out in that gem area there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good.
Did Todd send you the video of the demo of the sniffing dogs?
I don't know. Did we get a video?
I should get him to send you guys it. It's really neat.
Yeah, no. I saw it in the Western Producer, actually, after Anne-Marie mentioned it, but no, that'd be great to see.
Yeah.
Incredible. Anything else from the reports or questions? So if not, I guess we're going on to the report card stuff, are we?
Yeah, I have the resolutions here
And the
Todd provided me with.
Okay.
He just wanted me to remind you guys that the ASB conference registration is due on September 20th, so whoever wants to go to that conference to let Todd know, and he will register whoever wants to attend that. And that's at the Hand Hills Lake Club on October 22nd. So I'm not too sure how you guys want to go about the resolutions. I do have I have Todd's notes that he made agreeing or disagreeing with what the response was. So if you just want to go through the responses, does that work?
Sure.
Okay. So the loss of the liquid strychnine, Todd, it was proposed grade was accepted in principle, and Todd agreed with that. I don't know if there's any questions regarding that. The Wildlife Predator Compensation Program enhancement, it was proposed grade was incomplete, and Todd said he thinks it's incomplete because there is no definite answer. More work needs to occur to get the app created and response time better.
Makes sense.
Yeah. The dead stock removal, proposed grade was unsatisfactory, and Todd said resolution asks for 50% cost share, and he's not where the return of investment is or where testing is better. So didn't really answer the question. The carbon credits for permanent pasture and forested lands, it was accepted in principle, and Todd agreed with this. The multi-stakeholder committee to work at reducing the use of fresh water by the oil and gas industry in Alberta. This proposed grade was incomplete, and the comments were to this was response only acknowledged the process, didn't touch on striking a committee or any real changes. So that was noted. And the STEP program, agriculture, it was proposed grade was accept the response, and Todd agreed to this. And, the access to agriculture-specific mental health resources, proposed grade was unsatisfactory, and Todd's comments, I suspect it doesn't meet the expectations of the resolution, but it is a fair response, and he said I would accept in principle. And the last one, no royalties on farm saved seed. Proposed grade was accepted in principle, and comments, I would say it is unsatisfactory because it doesn't answer the question. We are asking for abandoning the idea, and they are saying to go forward is one of two options, neither or abandoning. So that's what. So if there's any questions for Todd or myself.
Questions?
I don't know.
Does anybody know that they want to go to the Hand Hills, so these guys could just start a list to pass it on to Todd? Save us all some work?
Sure.
Yeah, so Brian.
Maybe we should ask who isn't going, who can't go. So everybody can attend on October 22nd. And Ellen is away today, so she would be the only person then that we'd have to get in touch with.
Let's get Todd to touch.
Okay. And I'll tell you, the first time I went to the Hand Hills, I thought I'd never find it, so make sure you check them out. And it's in my sort of part of the world, but yeah. Yeah, well, October 22nd, you won't have the ferry will be long gone, so. Yeah, it's too bad. Maybe I can ask for special disposition or something. Yeah, they really listen up in Edmonton. Anything else for these two lovelies? Nope. Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you, guys.
Have a good rest of the summer, because it's not over yet.
No kidding, yeah.
You bet. All right. So I see Mr. Jeff here. So Jeff, join us if you would like for item 11.3. Is that what you were thinking?
Yes, I was thinking 11.3, and I'm not sure. I know I've been here most of the day, but I'm not sure if we've done 10.4 yet, or council's looked at that ADOA proclamation for Alberta Development Officers Week.
We can do that right now, 10-4. Anne-Marie will like to do that one. See if she's changed any. So it's a proclamation for Alberta Development Officers.
Yeah, so we got an email from the Alberta Development Officers Association. This is sent out every year, and it's meant as a way to recognize those frontline people that are fulfilling the development officer duties. County Council proclaimed Development Officers Week 2 years ago, I believe, but we didn't find any information for it happening last year. Personal thoughts is it's great to recognize people that do good jobs for the organization in the community, and I fully support that our Plan Development Department does that, and I would request the council make this proclamation.
All right. We need a mover and a shaker. Kelly.
Question first off, and then I could, question. Are you planning to do anything? Is there any money involvement?
No, I might end up taking the department for lunch, but that won't require any funding from the county, no.
Kelly's moving it?
Yeah.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. So now down to 11.3. Cost sharing, 15th Avenue West and 2nd Street West.
This RFD has to do, in part, actually in full, with a development permit approved this morning at MPC. We had previously had talks regarding the signalization and the necessity of traffic signals at the intersection of 15th Avenue, 2nd Street West, Highway 873, and the eastbound on-ramp to Highway 1. Knowing that transportation, the County of Newell, and the city all have a share in this intersection, we had previous talks, and there was direction given to administration to proceed with pursuing a cost share agreement for the intersection design and the signalization and the updates to the intersection. The draft agreement was prepared by Alberta Transportation for the intersection design and the installation of the traffic lights. The funding model is shown in there as it was directed by county and city council to proceed with. So that is one attachment with this RFD. The second portion of this RFD was a portion that we wanted to deal with in part at the intersection design, and in discussion with the IMDP committee, it was requested that myself meet with city staff after that to take a look at the width of 15th Avenue. History of 15th Avenue is very interesting. I'm not sure we have time today to go into it all, but I will give everybody a little bit of background here, and I can answer any questions. So back in the mid-2000s, a property in the north end of the city developed and requested access onto 15th Avenue. That property was developed, and there was an agreement at that time that an additional westbound lane on 15th Avenue would be constructed by the city and cost shared by the county. The county would contribute their proportionate share. At that time, the city share was 75% for the improvements, and the county share was 25%, as identified through letters and minutes that I was able to dig up. There is really no clear reason I can find in the minutes why that additional lane wasn't constructed, other than to construct a full additional westbound lane would require acquisition of land and relocation of power poles on the north side of 15th Avenue. So my assumption is that that wasn't possible at that time to acquire that land. As everybody is aware, with the Canalta real estate development going in there, we took a pretty serious look with a traffic impact assessment performed by their engineer, as well as reviewed by one of our engineers because of the history of the intersection. That traffic impact assessment said no additional westbound lane would be necessary, and improvements could be facilitated in the existing right-of-way, so no additional land should be pursued or required from the parcel on the north side. So IDP gave that development permit blessing and made a request that I meet the following day with Don Sari and Alan Martins again to discuss options and issues with 15th, and just to ensure that we didn't require that additional lane. In that meeting, it was discussed. We discussed a lot of things. We discussed the history of 15th. We discussed cost shares in the past that didn't happen, and we didn't get much more information. So we had a real in-depth look at it, and we thought about what does this development mean? What does the traffic movements truly mean in this area? And we were well aware at the time of the traffic impact assessment that southbound Highway 873 to westbound 15th Avenue turning movement would not be the best scenario for a large vehicle. A B-train, even other large combination units could facilitate it, but not very nicely. So that's what exists there today, and we know we have large movements in and out of there on a very frequent basis. So what we had talked about and what we recommended as kind of an optimal solution for this area would be taking a look at improvements of that radius of the corner, southbound on 873 to westbound on 15th Avenue. You can see that the existing radius is not what the radius on any of the other four corners are at this intersection. That's because no improvements were ever made on them. We did happen to find some drawings of when 2nd Street West was upgraded by the City of Brooks that did show a similar radius being put on this corner. Again, we have drawings. That drawing actually showed this median being extended all the way down and widened out, and a median being all the way down 2nd Street West. So my guess is that when the decision was made not to install a median on 2nd Street West, the talks fell apart about the improvements north of here, and realistically on a street that the city had no control or ownership over. Long story short, that being said, we've pulled some designs with a 50-meter radius that would match up to the opposite side of the road and facilitate the larger turning movements. We also looked at it that taper would start roughly 40 meters north of the intersection in the standard design drawing and end roughly 60 meters west of the intersection. Taking a look at that in relation to the proposed approach from the Canalta development, we thought, here at the maximum extent of the pavement addition here, we're going to be adding 2 meters to a grade widening of the roadway. In discussions, and it was brought up, I'm not sure who brought it up, but it was definitely an agreement between myself, Don, and Alan that it would probably be reasonable to extend that widening all the way across to 3rd Street or Township Road 19-2 South. That existing lane is 3.5 meters wide, which is your standard lane width. But I do believe the addition of an additional 2 meters for that entire length would really help with traffic movements in and out of the development, as well as off of 2nd, off of 3rd, and on to Joanne Trucking Road or Township Road 19-2 South. So I'll digress here and stop filling you with useless information. Long story short is, this project was initially talked about between the county and city back in 2006 when this property developed and requested this access. At that time, it was agreed to by county and city council that, the improvements would be made by the city under a cost share agreement with the county. At that time, it was 75% city, 25% county. The city has addressed their council with this, and their council is open to it. Their council does not believe that the developer should bear any of the costs associated with it, because like the traffic lights, this is an improvement that isn't going to only benefit that parcel. It's going to benefit the traffic movements to the more industrial use, Joanne Trucking Road. There's a feeding operation to the west of this as well. And again, this is maybe something that should have been done and followed through with at the time. So what City Council has recommended and approved and are on board with is a 50-50 cost share to look at these turning radiuses and grade widening. As mentioned earlier, the grade difference between the lot and the existing road is substantial. The lot is quite a lot lower than the existing roadway, which also, you know, goes to speak to current safety levels of large trucks and edge of pavement and the steep drop off there. We don't know. Don and I have put our heads together, and I believe we've came up with a very, very conservative estimate of $300,000 to see these improvements happen. Again, a lot of that will be dependent on the final grading plan of the development to the north. So I again, have had quite a few talks with the city, with the developer on this, and I support this, and I'm asking council to consider looking at cost sharing this with the city at 50-50.
Oh, jeez. Thanks, Jeff. Forgotten what I was going to say after all that. Oh, I know. Conservative, so if the price goes up, we'll probably just do 50-50 on any additional costs as well.
The city did put a maximum amount on their contribution, but did say, you know, similar to transportation, the city agrees to share these costs on a 50-50 basis with the county up to a maximum contribution of $150,000. Should the cost be estimated to be higher, once the agreed upon design is complete, the city will review and potentially increase its maximum contribution. So I think this is something that, you know, once we get to work and receive grading plans from the lot, and we can enlist an engineer, and like I said, I'd really like to enlist one engineer to look at the design and installation of signalization at the intersection. And I mean, it goes hand in hand with this radius improvement, because it's going to dictate pole locations and everything else. So I think hiring one consultant to break it into two schedules and getting a design done on it would be great, and reassessing once we get kind of a B estimate on what the work looks like.
Sounds good. Questions? Kelly?
Jeff, has the developer indicated any other entrance to the property? Yeah, on the west side? Okay. So how is that road? That's a narrow road.
Township Road 192 South is, I don't know the exact pavement width. I'm going to guess it's about 8.5, maybe 9 meters wide. So it is a narrower road for a 2-lane highway, but the speed limits on that road are less. I don't foresee any issues. Again, this proposed access is the only access right now that is being approved under phase 1 of the development. Future phases are penciled into there right now in what they hope to be, but it's been identified that phases 2 through 4 could not change at all or could have substantial changes. So I would suggest looking at that at future stages.
Evan?
Jeff, so for high loads that come off of the interchange and around, are these lights going to affect that, you know? If there's a high load that can't go through the underneath the overpass, that they come up and around it? For the lights?
The traffic signals, you mean? We'll take that into account under design. We know the high loads moving down Highway 1 use the overpass as a get around, and that will, I'm sure, be more transportation to comment on, but it's definitely noted that we'll make sure that's maintained.
Wayne?
I was in Tabor yesterday and had a very high load go in, and they've designed these signal lights now. They just move them out of the way. Yeah. And I was sitting there watching them doing it. Holy smokes, I didn't realize they could do it, but yeah, they've got it figured out already.
Actually, the most recent set of traffic lights on Highway 1 at the west end of Strathmore do the exact same thing. They pivot out of the way for high loads moving down Highway 1 through Strathmore.
Amory, where's the $150,000 coming from?
That is a good question. I would have to follow up on that with Matt. Yeah, I don't have a funding solution for it right now, but I will definitely follow up with Matt.
Anything else? So Jeff is looking for a motion to cost share. I am 11.3. Anybody want to make a motion for that? Brian?
Well, I would make the motion, but I just want to be clear. If it's option one, we're actually asking for 284,000. Is that correct?
Yes, my option one, I really wanted to get the funding agreement with transportation and the city as part of this motion as well to proceed with execution of that agreement. So you're right, it would be the 284,347.
So that takes in effect everything.
I am curious where we would use the draw from which part of the budget. Because I think we need to make, I'm comfortable making the motion, I'm just not sure where you want to pull it from.
That's a good question. My first guess would be from the infrastructure fund, but I would have to follow up with Matt and confirm that, but that's what I would suggest. But I can definitely follow up with Matt on that and get back with that answer.
Do you want to wait until we get the answer, guys?
Well, I don't think so. I think that's where I would have, if you were asking me, one of, not knowing budget like Matt does or Kevin does, I would say infrastructure fund too. But so that's where my motion will be, from the infrastructure fund.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Clarence?
So we're going for 284?
All right, any further discussion? Kelly?
Question. I thought we had already agreed to the lights, the 134, but maybe we didn't have the exact figure. Is that it?
I don't think we ever got a formal motion. I asked for direction and we proceeded. I did want to get the actual agreement in front of council just to make sure that the funding allocations were good and acceptable. So we did have direction from county and city council, but I don't believe there was a formal motion on it.
Any further questions? All right, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. So, just page 1 and 2 are complete. I guess we'll go backwards to do we go back to 10.5, I guess? Okay. 10.5, so is someone coming in for that? No. Okay. Perfect. Just a policy review. Any questions on that? And if not, we need a motion to approve these revisions in the safety policy. Hubie? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Compensation review. Any questions on that? If not, we need a motion to accept Anne-Marie moves with changes. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Checks for payment. And, oh wow. Brian, you should be doing a dance or something for AFRAC radios. How many years has that been?
It was going before I even became part of Newell 911, but yeah, and I guess they were all distributed, and fire chiefs and the people that have been using them are very, very pleased and ecstatic about the way they work. And one of the, I knew this beforehand, but one of the really highlights is that, and I talked to Kevin Swanson just really briefly, is that if Bassano had a call, they never could hear them unless they were asked to. Well, this way they can phase them in or phase them out. Just depends on what they need, they require. And yeah, so they're clear as a bell. Really, really great communications. We had a bit of a hiccup with they needed extra batteries, so I don't know if that'll come up sometime in your travels, because there's, you know, if you're on site for more than 11 or 12 hours, they do need an extra set of batteries, and those don't happen often, but when they do, it is critical for communication. So we ended up having to, and I think we're meeting tonight, but the indication is the board will handle that over budget. That won't be placed on the county or the municipalities' burden, but we can handle it within our own budget. But the county did cover that off initially, just so we could get it done rather than waiting for a meeting to work it forward. So anyways, it's a good system, and so far so good. Just need to find a home for our used radios now.
Are they of any value?
Well, it's they are, because there is, you know, for the most part, this is still pretty new technology, and a lot of rural communities still are using the old system, so there might be some value there for them as used units to go into other fire departments within Southern Alberta. So that's I think Stuart's working on that with Kevin to see that. We'll get those questions answered tonight, hopefully.
Hand-me-downs from the county,
Yep. Part of our amalgamation.
Those AFRAC radios have been on the go since I was on 911. So it's getting to be a long time ago.
Every time you wait, they go up about $500. So.
Of course. All right, we need a motion for this check over $350,000. Tracy will move payment for that. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Direct debit register and the payment register, and there's also the tax register. Are there questions or any problems with anything in there? Need more information on? If not, I would entertain a motion to accept the payment register. Clarence moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Request for function of council. Seeing none, we'll move on. And Mark.
Afternoon. You got my report. Key highlights, just the progress on road graveling program, about 72% complete, up from 48% of last reporting period. Truck drivers have been busy placing aggregate on the shoulder pull program, which should be wrapped up here. What else we got? No new water activations over the last period from the rural water side of things. Highway 876 paving project update remains mostly third-party utility locates have been completed. Fortis continues working on the north and south portions of the roadway to relocate their 500 power poles, and they've got 2 crews out there. I guess the one crew is almost wrapped up their component. TransCanada Pipelines has yet to relocate, and the subcontractor to AECon is on site and been moving dirt since August 19th. So they do believe that they'll be moving dirt until the end of October at least to wrap up just the grading component, at which time surfacing gravel will be put down for the winter season, and then the paving crew will come back with the base and pave work, so in 2020. EID partnership, so progress in Rainier North area, and we are working on the plans for Bow City. It's a small project, but we'd like to see ourselves get in there potentially this year, but likely next year. And then we've had a couple meetings now on Rosemary and getting Rosemary advanced into 2020 start date as well, but it would be late summer if we got started in there. We also received approval from Her Majesty the Queen for land owned out in Millicent where the Buckford Wildlife Project is. We tied into the Millicent project in 2016, I believe it was, 2016, 2017. We finally got the land acquisition through the process there, so we have a few extra kilometers of roadside drainage to clean up from where they're originally. So land acquisition taking a couple years to get done in those areas, but that's just fine. It happened. And working on budget. Budget is a big one for all of us right now. With Matt's deadline, the end of September. So my staff are working to get their things done for September 15th so that I can give it a review before we kick it out the door to finance and eventually get it in front of council. And we are still working and very close to getting staff connected with tablet devices out in the field. And the trucks and have all been equipped with the tablet mounts to be able to accommodate that, so they'll be able to see the work orders, they'll be able to enter their daily time, and all those sorts of things, removing the paperwork that is redundant when they bring it in and somebody else has to put it in electronically. So those are really the highlights. No update on the permit activity report because I didn't receive the update through road data for the month end. So that's what I've got for council.
Any questions for Mark? Kelly?
Where's the bike rodeo?
I didn't have any time to ask anybody how the bike rodeo was, but I think the guys enjoy getting out and doing something different from time to time rather than dealing with the... they were in... Did I not put it in there? I didn't put it in there. I'd have to go back. Yeah, I thought it was down Rolling Hills area, but I'll follow that one up for my next report and let you know. Sorry.
Any other questions for Mark? Your motion to accept the municipal reports. Kelly will move that.
Mark, just a reminder that I would like to be on the list for the electronic speed sign for that back road out of Bassano going north.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just on the record.
All in favor of the motion to accept? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thanks, Mark. Post agenda. Update on regionalization. There is some information there on the RMA response, and then a number of letters that have been received from August 19th to 30th, and feedback regarding, and we had a meeting yesterday, and there will be a media release coming out on that later today, I would think. So, anything else there, guys? No. Minibus monthly report, Q2 financials. Anything in your communities coming up, Anne-Marie? How was Patricia this year? Yeah. It was good. Good. Was it lots of people?
Looked like
good weather.
Good weather. Yeah, it looked like the attendance was up, but you never know until you actually hear the numbers. But yeah, it was a good rodeo.
Good. All right. We need a motion to move in camera. Wayne will move us in.
at all right.